Right, everyone, we're back with the legend himself, Nostradamus himself, a very jubilant Nostradamus, Vince Rugari. Vince, you've not been in the channel in a good while, actually. I think it was September we last had you on, but I feel as if you're just part of this entire story. And it's only right that we have you on now that the season is over and Celtic are celebrating. And it's only right we have you on this night of all nights. We didn't really plan this, but you're celebrating as well, and I dare say a good percentage of you guys watching this channel are celebrating as well. If anyone doesn't know what we're talking about, Vince, fill them in.
Oh, mate. About an hour or so ago, Australia just qualified for the World Cup, beat Peru in a penalty shootout with Andrew Redmayne, the most unlikely hero you could possibly imagine. It's fantastic. All this is the Grey Wiggle, they've called him. I mean, we've been calling him that for a few years in Australia because the dancing stuff is nothing new to us because he did it for Sydney FC in a grand final a couple of years ago. But now to see him do it, in front of the world, basically, because a lot of people were watching this game, right? Because there's only two teams left, sorry, to make it to the World Cup. So many people watching this game, and it was hilarious. It was hilarious and terrifying watching everyone realize what was going on, because it was either going to be, all right, Andrew Redmayne has embarrassed himself and the country, and we're not making the World Cup, or this clownish behaviour is going to get us there, and it got us there, and it's just one of the best feelings. Australia, the way we qualify for World Cups, we never tend to do it in a normal fashion. And I'm sort of glad about it because this morning is just, mate, sensational.
Amazing. And it was early morning, wasn't it? It must have been middle of the night almost when you were watching it.
My alarm, I'm in Adelaide at the moment, not in Sydney. So it was a 3:30 a.m. start here. So my alarm was set for 3 a.m. I've had two coffees already. And probably two breakfasts, I'd say, to be honest. But this is part of these games usually happen home and away, right? These World Cup qualifying
Mm.
playoffs, and usually Australia gets to have 80,000 people watching our home leg. It's not like that this time, but it's everyone would be familiar in Australia if you're a football fan, familiar with this feeling of trying to go to bed at about 9 o'clock so you can wake up at a stupid hour to watch the game. It shows, the people who do that, it shows how much it means, like it's got to matter to you if you're doing something like that. And it was beautiful. I watched it with my old man. I'm in Adelaide with the family at the moment, and to take in this moment with the old man this morning was special. We woke up all of Adelaide's western suburbs when that final save from Redmayne was made. It was absolutely magnificent.
I was even nervous watching it. Genuinely, I was quite nervous watching it, mainly because I didn't know how this interview would go if you'd have lost. But we don't need to visit that at the moment. Six in a row in terms of World
It's
Cups.
five. It's five. Yeah, yeah.
Five.
And I'd be
Okay.
mad, Hamish, if you weren't emotionally invested in at some degree after the last
Oh,
12 months
honestly.
that we've enjoyed together. We've all become Celtic fans, and I think as we've seen, on Trophy Day over there and around that time, that Celtic fans have become, honorary Aussies wearing the cork hats and inflatable kangaroos and whatnot, and now, another Aussie potentially joining the coaching staff, which I'm sure we'll talk about shortly.
Yeah.
It's just there's a lot of crossover, and it's really cool. I think I might have said to you in the past that Celtic feels like it almost feels like watching a quasi national team at the moment at a club level for Australia, and the bandwagon's open for you guys to join us later in the year at the World Cup for sure.
Yeah. While we're on the subject of that, you just reminded me. Let's get it on.
Top man, what a legend.
I know. I had to wear it. You should have seen me dancing down the stairs earlier, saying my team qualified for the World Cup, even though Scotland bottled it 10 days ago. I've got a team to support. I've got a few teams actually. Celtic, I've got Croatian. We've obviously got the massive Japanese contingent. We've got American, possibly a Dane as well, and whoever's playing England, of course. So we've got plenty of teams we can support as Scots, even though we're not going to be there. Let's run the Vince highlights then. Have a look at this, everyone.
As long as he's able to show some positive signs in the way the team plays, as long as fans start to listen to him actually talk about the football. Like it's very quickly after his first press conference, I reckon you'll start to get a picture of this guy and how he operates. Sorry, and as long as he's showing a few little signs like that on the field and off the field, and as long as you don't get embarrassed by Rangers in the old firm, I think he'll still get enough time to do what he needs to do, and eventually that's going to pay massive dividends for you guys. I reckon. stats and facts and figures and achievements and an honours list can tell you one thing. The reason why we're so bullish about Ange Postecoglou is because of who he is and how he does what he does. And you can't gain that understanding from reading a couple of articles or checking out, going down a YouTube rabbit hole. Do you know what I mean? You have to sort of have experienced it in a way, lived with his football, understood the full context. And it's remarkable. Like it's crazy. Like none of us do have a bad word to say about Ange. Maybe there's one or two who have been burned by him in the past, but on the whole, I think most sensible football observers in Australia will say that he is the best coach we've had. Look, probably not even in terms of just football. He's potentially the best coach Australia as a sporting nation has ever produced. And I don't say that lightly. We've had quite a few in a lot of sports, but he is right up there. The way his teams play, what that means, what that represents in a country like Australia, which has this inferiority complex, maybe similar to Scotland in terms of how we're perceived abroad. He goes straight for that and he destroys it. It's amazing. We have learned, as you guys will hopefully slowly learn, that Asian football is not necessarily to be sneered at, and in particular Japanese football. It's it's probably the best league in Asia for sure. It's probably knocking on the door of the top 20 or top 15 or top 10 in the world, I reckon, because of the amount of money that's pumping through there and the quality of players that Japanese clubs are producing. And the big thing about all that is Ange has had an amazing influence in the last few years in terms of how Japanese clubs play football, as he did in the A-League back in the day. He's hyper intelligent. He's extremely stubborn to the point where you may judge in various situations whether that's a positive or a negative. But that's who he is. He is total belief in himself and his convictions, and he's a serial winner. Like, he wins everywhere he goes, regardless of the level, regardless of the circumstances at that club or national team before he arrives. He loves a project. There comes a point in everywhere that Ange has gone where the players, they go along with it, and at some point there's usually a miracle result, a late winner, some sort of big event or moment where they stick to the style, even if the logical part of their brain will tell them this isn't getting us anywhere. And it yields something. It yields a result. And that becomes like a moment of realization where the whole group sees that if we do what the boss says, if we do what Ange says, the dividends are actually going to come. He's been telling us all along, and here's our first example. I'm sure that moment will come at some point for Celtic. If you couldn't see evidence of something building, then I'd understand being apprehensive or scared or worried. But you can. And I think you can see the conviction in the bloke, the way he speaks and carries himself. And so I think it's just a matter of accepting it for what it is. He's already in the door. He's already working. Just let him work. Be patient. Hopefully you won't have to be too patient. And the good times are going to be just ahead.
You must feel smug watching that back, Vince. I mean, you've called all of this, mate.
Yes and no. Like, yes, because yes, I've called it. It's smug. Like, you get the smug feeling when you think back to what, not you, admittedly, but a lot of Celtic fans were telling us at the time, which was just like, none of you wanted to hear it, and I understand why, but we're trying, that's sort of why this is the no component for me. Is like, I think I might have said to you before that it's like predicting the sun to rise in the morning, and you probably feel that now that you've had a year of Ange and you understand who he is. Like, this was coming. I couldn't see him failing because the guy is just such a force of nature. He's so switched on. For me, he's up there with one of the best managers in the world right now. I'm not sure if he's top 10, top 20, I don't know, but he's certainly higher in that list than any Australian has ever been. But this is just what he does, and it was magnificent to see him do it again in a new environment, and a new set of doubters. He wins them over. Once you hear him talk, once you see him operate, I think early doors that video of him mic'd up on the training pitch was a big thing that I think swung a lot of people his way. And just once you get a sense of the bloke, what he's about, it's just hard to see it going any other way. Like, I know it was a dicey season as well at times for sure, and Rangers showed that they're a top quality team to make the Europa League final, and so that just sort of adds to the achievement as well. It's not like they beat a crap Rangers and the rest of the league. They beat a good Rangers to the title and did it his way, which was magnificent for us to see as well.
It's funny watching that first interview that we did well over a year now, and I would urge anyone who's maybe just come across the channel recently or in the last year and hasn't watched that to give it a watch, because first of all, we did it first thing in the morning for me, so it's kind of the reversal of what we're doing right now. I was just awake, I think it was about 6 in the morning, and over the course of that, whatever it was, half an hour, you just convinced me that Ange was the real deal. You genuinely watch me changing from the start of the video to the end of the video, and the change is amazing. And it's funny because I was thinking earlier, say Carlo Ancelotti leaves Real Madrid tomorrow and they go after Ange Postecoglou, they appoint him, a Real Madrid fan channel comes to me and says, you want to try and talk about Ange and explain him, I would back him to do that job brilliantly, and I would back myself to go onto that channel and say all the things you said a year ago. Yeah. And it's crazy, that belief you have in someone, because Ange had never managed over in Europe really, apart from that short spell he had in Greece. Yet you were like so convinced that he would do well at Celtic. You did say that it was a risk, and it was a risky appointment, but you were totally convinced he would do it. And I guess it's just that the thing I remember, and we heard that a minute ago, is that you said you can look at Ange's trophy haul and his stats and all of that stuff, but it's everything else that goes with it. It's the feeling you get with him, and I think every Celtic fan feels that now.
Yeah, definitely. I feel the same way as you. I've said this to some people here in Australia recently, and some of them still even doubt me. And sometimes I feel like I drink too much of the Kool-Aid at times, but I genuinely think there's not a gig in club football, probably even international football, that Ange couldn't do. Like, you could drop him into any job, and I reckon he'd make it work. Now,
in Man United, you could drop him in there, couldn't you?
I think so. Yeah, and he'd face exactly the same thing as what he'd faced at Celtic, and he'd overcome it in the same way, because he'd be himself, and he's a fantastic manager, obviously a top person. He's a coach as well who just like, I'm not sure I've ever come across a coach who just like understands the fan perspective as well, just says all the right things, and really just because he's a fan of football himself, and I think that's a big part of it. But yeah, I think it's genuinely the case that this guy is going to the top. When, where, what is the top? I don't know, but you guys need to enjoy him for the next couple of years. I think he'll stick around for a couple more seasons, and then it's inevitable that he'll move on. But he won't move on just yet. He likes to bank a couple of trophies where possible. And he likes to leave a little bit of a legacy and set up a club before he leaves it. He's not a manager who sticks around for a short period of time. The only time he did that was Melbourne Victory, and the only reason why he left was because the Socceroos wanted him. So, it's going like we thought. It's cool, mate. It's so cool. Like, I got to say, like waking up in the morning to a new bit of Ange news. He said something else, or there's a new piece of Ange related content on social media. It's just fantastic for us. It's so much fun.
Yeah, it's been amazing. What happens now, I suppose, is the question we should probably ask, because you're a predictor of all things Celtic and the future. People will be hanging on your every word, and I guess we're at a point now, close season, looking ahead to season 2 of the Ange Postecoglou revolution, if it still is that, at Celtic. What do you think it looks like next season?
Look, I can't predict everything, obviously, but the sense I've got at the moment is that it looks like what a lot of Ange's second seasons do, which is more success, improvements. It's hard to imagine the team not improving, in terms of the football that they've played. I mean, I just can't see them not getting better. He's got a big transfer kitty to play around with now that you guys are qualified for the Champions League. So he'll get in some more quality. The more time he spends with the group, the deeper the sort of football that he plays, and the way that Ange's teams operate, the deeper that embeds into them. And then there's also the Champions League, which I'm just so excited about. It's a new frontier again for Australian football. I'm really hoping I'll be able to get over there to Europe for the first couple of games. I mean, the idea of an Aussie coach coaching against a Barcelona, Real Madrid, Chelsea, Man City, you name it, is just like all new for us. And you guys should know by now as well that he's only going to approach it in one way. And the first person from continental Europe who asks him whether he's going to change his style or whatever is we already know what sort of answer they're going to get. It's just not going to happen. If he hasn't done it so far, why on earth would he do it against any other team? You know, it's he'll go wherever you guys draw, and he'll take the game to him, and it'll be a white knuckle ride, just as parts of this season have felt like. And you know what? You might not win, but you'll probably be proud of the team no matter what happens.
It's interesting to look back at what he's done previously in his career, and probably the obvious comparison would be that World Cup in 2014 when he took Australia into the group of death, I think it was. Probably even a bigger gulf between those Aussie players and the likes of Netherlands, Chile, Spain, as there will be to maybe Celtic and a kind of top European team. You might disagree with that, but is there a chance that we come away from that group stage, as you say, with not too many points, but feeling proud of the team? Or do you think he has it within himself to get results playing his way against the best teams, knowing that he won't compromise?
I mean, look, the short answer is I don't know, and this is why I say I can't predict everything. Like, football's a funny game, though. We're just talking about the Socceroos, and Andrew Redmayne's come on and as a saviour. It's just completely random.
Yeah.
Like if you'd have told me that yesterday, I'd say you're off. In fact, I had the thought popped into my head in the first half of the game, just thinking like, what if Arnie puts spreaders on? Nah, that couldn't possibly happen. So what I'm trying to say is football is random sometimes, and you just don't know. And I wouldn't rule anything out when it comes to Celtic and the Champions League under Ange Postecoglou. I think it's definitely within the team and the coach and his methods to spring some surprises and sneak into the second stage. Like, it happens in the Champions League. You get upsets. Sharif beat Real Madrid, for God's sake, at the Bernabeu. So it's not like upsets don't happen. And I would imagine Celtics is a much better side, right? So it's not within the realms of possibility. The thing that just gives me a little bit of doubt is just the continued gap between the richest teams and the not so rich in Europe. Man City's just signed Haaland, and it's like, okay, this is part of the reason why at times I fall out of love with football, because it's just imbalanced, and European club football, I mean, specifically. It's just, yeah, it feels like sometimes there's a gap that's just too big there, but the way you bridge it is by backing yourself and playing good football on the front foot, get in the face of these teams, give them some of their own medicine, and amazing things happen. Ange puts that belief in his players. We've seen it time and time again at that World Cup, like you mentioned, but also as well, and I think a lot of Socceroos fans often gloss over this tournament in terms of peak Socceroos under Ange, but the 2017 Confeds Cup was awesome. The game against Chile, I think it was Tim Cahill's 100th cap, and I think it was a draw in the end. But my God, that was like the template of how Australian teams should play: aggressive, and not just aggressive physically, but aggressive in terms of how you play, and never taking a backward step, and playing football and being brave enough to play football against a supposedly superior team. And I would imagine that's the same sort of spirit that Ange will sort of instill into his players.
Yeah, and we had experience of it last year, didn't we, in the Europa League? Not against maybe the top teams in Europe, but good sides, Betis, Leverkusen, and he didn't wilt at all in that. We took these teams on. I think we lost 3 out of the 4 games there, but we could conceivably have won 3 out of the 4. I think we had the lead in 3 out of the 4. So I think that's something to work on for next year. Holding on to leads and finding a way to not give away daft goals at key points. I mean, when you look at Ange's kind of time he spends at clubs, and he tends to only spend maybe 3 years at a club side anyway. I think he had slightly longer at maybe Melbourne at the start of his career, but it tends to be 3 years now, and then he moves on. You already touched on that. Is there a point he reaches at a club where his methods no longer hold the same kind of substance with the players? Does instructions kind of not register as much as players? I mean, we had Brendan Rodgers as our previous manager, and he's quite a famous one for doing really well maybe in his first season, second season, but when it gets beyond there, you kind of feel as if the players aren't quite buying into it in the same way. Marcelo Bielsa would be another example where that happens, the kind of burnout there. Is that the case with Ange at all previously?
I'm trying to think. I wouldn't say at club level that's really happened so much. I'd say definitely in the Socceroos though. It certainly felt like, you know, not that the message was no longer falling flat, but I don't know. It's hard to explain, and it's certainly not that the players weren't buying into it anymore. It's just maybe look. It must be such an intense experience playing under an Ange team. You're on your toes all the time. You've got to be, and that's just hard to maintain for a long period of time. So when you look at his club moves as well, I don't really think any of them have ended because things weren't working out. It's
Yeah.
usually
He's
ended
been
because
headhunted, hasn't he?
that's
Yeah.
right, yeah. So there's a bit of that too. Um, it's not like at Brisbane Roar, his time was up, or at Yokohama his time was up. No, he gets picked off by another club, and I think that's probably how this story ends at Celtic, which is in a season or two, someone big comes knocking, and this is the sort of double-edged sword of the Champions League this season for you guys. Is if you guys make some, you know, get some big scalps and shock some people and play some wonderful football in Europe. Unfortunately, the trade-off is that more people are aware of who he is and what he does, and it then becomes a matter of time until someone comes knocking. But the good thing is, I don't think Ange is the kind of person or manager to just leave you guys in the lurch. I think he'll pick the right moment to leave. That it matters to him. I think the way he leaves a club, the legacy he leaves behind as well. Like look at Yokohama at the moment. I'm sure he had a massive hand in having Kevin Muscat take over as his successor. And they're playing. Look, I can't say I watch too much of them these days. I try and catch as many highlights as I can, but it seems to me the ethos that he left there is still alive. Um, Not always the case in the A League. Brisbane Roar after he left weren't so good. They did win a title a couple of years after, but I'd say that's more of an Australian football problem and an A League problem rather than Ange didn't get his succession planning right or anything like that. Yeah, just enjoy every moment because I mean, first of all, you should because it's just an enjoyable coach to have at the helm of your club. Everything's, it's as you guys know, it's so good. But also, managers like this don't come around every so often. He's a rare character. He's a rare manager, and he will move on to bigger and better things soon. So embrace everything that comes with it.
I think Ange said that himself at one point last season. He liked it to binge watching a Netflix series. You just want to watch every episode and get to the end. Whereas what you should really do, great analogy, you should really do is just enjoy it. Because how many times you get to the end of a series and you just think, right, I finished it. What else am I doing now? I wish I'd actually, I wish I could go back and enjoy it all again. And I kind of feel that's where we may be at some stage with Ange, but I don't want to get too negative. We had you on a year ago finding out about Ange. Now we're finding out about Ange's next job, so we'll move swiftly on before people fall out with us. Harry Kewell seems like he might be coming to the club. That's the report here. It was a few days ago. We've not heard anything to the contrary. Joining Ange's backroom team, it seems. What's the Aussie opinion on that?
Really, really interesting. I didn't see it coming. We had Harry on Stan Sport FC a few weeks ago, one of our last shows for the year. Might have been our last show, I'm not sure. And we asked him about, what are you doing in your coaching? Could we see you come back to the A League at some point? And he was pretty coy, pretty guarded with his answer. Said he was enjoying being a netball coach with his daughter, things like that. We've had no one here ever thought Harry Kewell would be a coach. He just didn't have that character as a player. Seemed like a very, very strange thing when he decided to enter management. And look, to be honest, looking at his record so far, I don't know how good a coach he is. It seems like he's struggled in some of his jobs. He's been sacked after short periods of time at clubs at a lower level. His last one was at, I think, Barnet, non-league in England. So, you look at that and you think, all right, maybe coaching's not for Harry. But maybe it is. Maybe he just needs to be in the right environment to bring it out of him. I wouldn't put it past Ange to be able to extract, whatever gold there is in a coaching sense from Harry Kewell. I also do remember asking Ange at some point, early doors at Celtic, when he was doing a couple of press conferences with Aussies about, do you have any plans to bring in an Aussie on your coaching staff? Because that's something he's done everywhere he's gone. Well, really, we only have one overseas club aside from Celtic, which is Yokohama F. Marinos, as an example. And he loaded his coaching staff up with Aussies there. And he said in the past that he thinks, one of the big advantages he's got that he can pass on to the Australian game at the moment is to be able to open doors for guys and bring people into his circle and let them learn, and then those people generally move on and become coaches in their own right, and often successful coaches. I wrote a story about this early last year about the University of Ange and how many Aussies have come through it and come through it and been fantastic coaches afterwards. And at the time when I asked Ange that question, he said, that he wasn't sort of going looking for an Aussie. He'd bring someone in if he thought they'd be the right fit on merit, sort of thing. He's not there to give out sort of freebies to Aussies just because they're Aussie. They've got to earn it, sort of thing. I'm not sure if that's the case though. Looking at this one, it seems to me like he just wants to help Harry out, maybe, or maybe that's part of it. Maybe he also thinks that Harry has something to offer. Um, maybe it's a combination of those sort of things. I mean, it's hard to know without being involved in those conversations. What I would say though is that it's pretty cool from an Aussie perspective to see Harry Kewell and Ange Postecoglou on the touchlines at Celtic. That's so good. It means as well, I think, that there's just the profile of Celtic here in this country just gets bigger. It's not only now that we have Ange at Celtic, it's Harry at Celtic, and there's not really
coming over to Australia at the end of the year.
Awesome. And there's rarely been any higher profile players in Australian history than Harry Kewell. Maybe Tim Cahill and Mark Viduka. You can have an argument, and anyone who could pick one of those three players as their best, you could sort of see it. It's probably a pretty closely run thing between those three guys, and it's just great. Riley McGree didn't do it. That might be something he looks back on in a few years' time with regret. But it's good to see another Aussie there, as well as Stuart McLaren, I should say, as well. I think coaching the under-23s as well. Another Brisbane connection too, a top guy, Stewie. So maybe there's more to come. Who knows?
Dealt with him a couple of years ago. I think he was managing a lower level team here. It might have been Stirling Albion, and he's a hell of a nice guy. So yeah, the Aussie connection's growing, and I take it for someone like Harry Kewell. I mean, it must be a real honour to work under Ange, and he'll be given absolutely everything for Ange. And I kind of think that's maybe a huge part of it is that it's a massive opportunity for Harry Kewell as well, and we know that Ange loves to give people who maybe feel they need an opportunity, things maybe aren't quite going their way, that chance to perform. We've seen it with so many Celtic signings, Jota, Joe Hart, Dyson Maeda. You could go through them all with a point to prove, and it feels like Harry Kewell has the same here.
Definitely. And just put aside the fact that Ange is Aussie, Harry now gets the opportunity to work under what I think we both agree now is one of the best coaches in the world. So it doesn't matter what stamps on your passport, what country you're from, et cetera, that's a big opportunity. And we really hope, as Aussies, that Harry blossoms as well. We'd like to see him succeed as a coach. It was random, like I said before, that he decided to become a coach. Nobody really picked it, and on the basis of recent evidence, nobody really thought that it's going to work out on him, for him. Sorry. Maybe it will now. Who knows? He could learn. The missing piece in his coaching sort of mentality could be the one thing that Ange has that he's able to provide, or a little bit of advice could point him in the right direction. Who knows?
Exciting. Any complaints about the whole Ange experiment so far, apart from the Cork hats? Apologies about that. I don't know what the hell folk were thinking wearing them.
Not really. My only complaint is that I haven't been able to get over there yet. I was hoping to. I was in London a couple of months ago covering the Tyson Fury fight at Wembley, and
I noticed that.
Yeah, and so I brought my missus with me as well as a bit of a pre-honeymoon. We're actually getting married here this weekend in Adelaide, which is why
congratulations.
Thank you very much. It was a very last minute trip. So we both went to London, and we thought, let's just get there first. Let's just book our tickets, and then once we're over there, we'll hopefully, if we want to stay longer, we'll change our flights, and I'll book some leave with work, and we'll get up to Glasgow. Anyway, I would have been able to change my flights through work, but my fiance, every time I was out at Wembley for a press conference with Fury and White, she was in our hotel room on the phone to Qantas trying to get her flights changed, because I didn't want to extend my trip without her also being able to extend her trip. Hours upon hours upon hours, she was on hold with Qantas. They never once picked up the phone. So we literally couldn't stay longer because they wouldn't let us change our flights. That still pisses me off to this day. I should have been there for at least some part of the end to that season, but hopefully I'll be there at some point this year for the Champions League, and If not, I'll settle for seeing a bunch of green and white hoops invading Sydney later this year as well.
Is that a goer then, do you think, for the Champions League? Do you think you could be over for a game? Because, I mean, that would be... I mean, I think derby games are incredible at Celtic Park, but I think Champions League nights are just a level above.
I think so too, and like I said before, it's new territory for Australia as well. I mean, I couldn't. Who knows when the next coach, aside from Ange, to coach a team in the Champions League is going to be? It's incredibly rare. I mean, it's rare for like big European nations as well. Some clubs, you know, don't play Champions League. Some play Champions League every 10, 20 years. So for an Aussie to be involved at that level is extremely rare, and I think I'm certainly going to be doing everything I can to convince my paymasters in this country to send me over because I just think it's a massive story for Australian sport. Um, can't miss it. It's going to be fantastic.
Amazing. So much to look forward to both for Celtic and Australia as a nation, as a sporting nation. So much happening in the rest of the year. Vince, I'm coming up to midnight. You're probably about 9 in the morning,
Uh,
10 in the morning.
8 here in Adelaide.
See, my timing's still miles off. I'm trying to work out exactly what time it is. I've been doing it for a year and I still can't do it. But we'll let you go and enjoy the rest of your day. We love having you on. I'm sure we'll have you on again in future. People are always asking after you. We had dozens of comments asking when Vince Rugari is next on. So hopefully everyone's happy now. And yeah, have a good time. Congratulations. Have a great weekend and we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, mate, and thanks to everyone who has asked. That's hilarious to me, but beautiful. It's just nice sometimes, that we can share things like this across borders, across countries. It's just a nice uniting feeling. It's such a warm glow you get out of this Ange story sometimes. So I'm glad to have been able to provide whatever insight I can provide to you guys. Not that, as I said, I'm no Nostradamus. We've just seen this movie before. We're just trying to tell you.